And I get it's 9 p.m. at night. And I said, whoever made up the rule of don't eat past 6 is a jackass. Like, what if you go to bed at 2 a.m.? That's the dumbest rule I've ever heard. I get the thesis behind it is don't eat.
Getting in shape can be scary. So many questions, so many things to learn. But that's where we come in. The Fitness Fundamental Podcast. The only podcast here to take the fear out of fitness. With your host, Dom Jackson. What's up, fitness freaks? This is Dom Jackson. You're tuned into the Fitness Fundamentals Podcast. The only podcast here to take the fear out of fitness. Now, I'm here with today's guest, Brad Jensen, nutrition coach from Keto Nutrition. Brad, how you feeling today, man?
Dude, I'm great, man. Honored to be here. How you doing?
I'm fantastic. I'm honored. It's an honor to have you on the show.
Good, man. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. So, me and Brad, we met on the gram, as the kids say these days.
Hey, in the DM and all, man.
Yeah. It all goes
slid
down
into my
DM.
Yeah. That's actually literally how I met my wife, which is actually really embarrassing. But
Really?
in the DM, dude. But then we got married, so go figure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Wow. All right. Well, getting podcast interviews and wives that way.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, I figured anybody named a sober bodybuilder on Instagram, they had a good story.
Yes. I hope so, man. Hopefully it can provide some value.
Yeah, so as far as being a business owner and a podcaster and the whole being the founder, correct, of Keto Nutrition?
Correct.
I want to hear like some of your story and your background, like where that all stems from.
Yeah, man. So, my story actually. So when I got in, I was young. I was 14, and I went through that chubby phase, 13, 14 years old, and I was teased. I was made fun of, but not like thrown in lockers. Like I was part of like the cool kids crew, but I was picked on. But I was kind of like always the last end of the joke, like, Jensen will eat the pizza, he's fat.
Okay.
And then I would eat the pizza. The kid who go swimming in July, and I live in Utah, and in July it's hot here, and I'm wearing a black shirt. I won't take off my shirt. So I was that guy, and I was just sick of being kind of teased. My self-confidence was really low, and I just felt really uncomfortable in my own skin. So I remember one day I hopped on my bike and I went to Barnes and Nobles, and that was before the days of there was a CD, the AOL CD back then that you had to pop in and it dialed up.
Right.
Yeah. So that was before. It would have been a hell of a lot easier today if it was Google, But so I rolled my bike to Barnes and Nobles, and I just started picking up any book I could on fitness and nutrition, and I remember it was the first time I had ever felt passionate in my life about anything. I was just fascinated by it. I would go and I'd read magazine cover to cover, and I was like, man, this is the real deal. This is what and I knew at that moment that was what I was going to do the rest of my life. So that's how I got into it, man. And I started picking up the books and I started applying what was in there. And it started to work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as a 15-year-old kid, I was taking tuna fish and brown rice and salsa to school for lunch.
That's hardcore.
Way more hardcore than I am today. And, but I wanted the result. I wanted it so bad. And so I kept doing that. And I started to see these changes in my body. And what happened, though, was I was just reading I was taking bits and pieces of everything I was reading, and I don't know how many calories I consuming, but I can tell you it wasn't enough. I also hit a growth spurt about my sophomore year in high school. So what happened was I went from being teased for being too fat to all my friends were calling me a stick figure because I got too skinny. And I was like, I can't win with these sons of bitches. Sorry, can I swear?
Yeah, you can. Don't worry. You can.
Okay. And so I started looking at more of the muscle side, and I started really getting into that. And the rest is history. I gained a ton of muscle. I ended up, my high school sweetheart was a girl who Had no idea I existed the year before. And,
Nice. You got jacked
you
and
know,
got the
and
girl?
that's got the girl. She was like, "Are you new?" And I was like, "No, I sat behind you in math all of last year."
I know about that feeling.
I wasn't even bashful about it. I was like, "Yeah, no, it's cool."
Oh, man, that's funny.
So that's you know what? That's how I got into it. And you know, I got my first personal training job. I got certified as a trainer while I was still in high school, and thank God I did that, Dom, because honestly, I was a really average student. I mean, I'm talking, I think I graduated with a 2.0 GPA.
Right here with you.
And I just, yeah, I didn't apply myself. I was just enthralled in fitness. But as a senior in high school, I thought if I can just pass this, I don't care, because this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. So I got a job at Bally Total Fitness. I don't even know if they have those. They don't have any more here.
Yeah, I don't think they have any more here either. I think they're bad at business. But I know about them though.
Yeah, it was like 2002. So I got a job there, and that's what I've done basically the rest of my life. You know, that was early on, and so I got my start in this industry as a high school senior, and so yeah, what's that? 16 years now, and this is all I've ever done.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, a good thing, because I didn't like I said, I didn't excel in school, so that's how I got into all this, and then yeah.
Now, so you know, being a trainer, coming in training from your own personal transformations, and then you started working at a gym. Now, how did that go from you being a trainer to you founding your own brand with Key Nutrition? How did that all come up?
Yeah, so I got into it, and you know, I guess let me back up a little bit as I got into bodybuilding, and I think it's something that's not talked about enough. But you know, I wanted to still go out and party. I really did. Like I mean, I was you know, I just had graduated. I was 19 years old, and I wanted to go show off my tight Abercrombie shirt at the parties. You know,
of course, I know all about the tight shirts, man.
Yeah,
it's a lifestyle.
Extra medium, you know, and you know, man, it's and so I wanted to go to these parties, but I knew what alcohol would do to me, and so I had a buddy say, "Hey, man, well, I got these pills," and it turns out they were painkillers, and I took a couple of them, and I remember I just loved it. I loved it, and that started me down a really bad path, you know, of drugs and because I wanted to stay away from the alcohol, because I knew what the alcohol would do to my results. But little did I know I was going down a rabbit hole that I would go. And so I, you know, why my name is the Sober Bodybuilder on Instagram was, how it came about was I went through, you know, I was functionally addicted to opiate painkillers for probably 4 or 5 years. No one really knew. I certainly didn't look like a drug addict. You know, I was running a gym by then, being a general manager at a Gold's Gym here, and just kind of had this dark secret. And I got into I left that job and got into a nutrition coaching job in about 2006, and at a place I worked for, and I loved it. And I realized, like, this is more the end I want to go, is, you know, doing the nutrition stuff. And unfortunately, I only lasted about a year, and my addiction started to take over. And so I ended up losing, because I couldn't stay sober, because,
right,
you know, the addiction gets worse, never better. And so, you know, I found myself back to this feeling that I had when I was a 14-year-old kid of just lost and desperate and just broken.
What steps did you kind of take? What was the point where you like realized, oh, I shouldn't be doing this anymore? Like, what was like the breaking moment? Was it a day? You just had a bad lift session? Like, what kind of made you feel like, oh, this is it? Was the nutrition job in general? Or you just kind of just realized?
Well, so that's when it started. I was kind of asked to voluntarily leave. My secret
Gotcha.
wasn't a secret anymore. The cat was out of the bag, and I lost that job. And Dom, I tell you, it just almost went kind of in the sequence of I lost the job, so I didn't have any money. So then I lost the house that I'd worked so hard to get. Lost the house. Then I'm living on a buddy's couch, and then he kicks me out, and then I'm living in my car. And it progressed so quick. And I come from a good family, upper middle class family, had everything provided for me, grew up in a religious home. So like I'm out here living in a car with a bunch of dope fiends. And I realized, and I did that for about a year. And I ended up I quit going to the gym, and ended up getting addicted to heroin at that point. And I remember just missing being into fitness, missing, like, I knew that was my passion and my calling, and I just was so lost. It was such a dark time. And, I ended up going to my grandfather's funeral on November 19th of 2012. And I was extremely loaded there and numb. And I remember carrying the casket, and everyone was crying, and I couldn't even feel. I was just so numb to life. And I said a prayer on the way home. I just said, man, God, this has got to end. I got to get back to what I know I love to do, what's fitness. And like, I'm missing my calling in life, and I'm going to die. And long story short, no shit, about an hour later, I had some sirens come on behind me, and
Wow.
I had a small warrant out for my arrest. And today they wouldn't even take me to jail on that. The jails are so crowded here, but back then they did. And I spent a couple weeks in jail was all, but it was the time that I dried out finally, and I kick and scream and detox. And but I just knew it was the last time I was going to have to go through this. Like, it was finally time. And I think my grandfather had something to do with it, to be honest. But so I got sober November 20th of 2012. So I'm happy to report. I just celebrated 6 years clean and sober off everything. And I owe that to God. And real quickly after I got sober, I started waiting tables at a restaurant. And a guy that had let me go at that nutrition coaching place came in to eat, and he said, "Oh man, I've been thinking about you. What are you doing waiting tables?" He said, "You're so good, in the fitness field." And I said, "Well, man," I told him the whole story, and he's like, "Geez," he's
That's
like, "Well,
awesome.
I'd love to give you another chance." So, yeah. And so I promptly quit my waiting table job, and I went back to doing what I love to do. And, did that for about 4 years at that place, and ended up starting Key Nutrition about 2 years ago. And so we do nutrition coaching there, and we write customized meal plans and workout plans for individuals. So that's how that. Sorry, that was a really
That's
long
fine.
version of
That
how
was a
it
great
came to
story.
today.
A lot of ups and downs, highs and lows. And I think a lot of the time people just, like, regardless of where people come from fitness wise, we always have our different whys to get there. For you, it started off as being a why for being picked on, like being a young boy and going through puberty and being in that like vulnerable stage, and then it becoming like fitness becoming your passion, and then kind of losing your path, and then coming back up to get back to it again because other things in life kind of took over. So I think no matter how long your story was, there's so many good parts of it that people can relate to, that it's someone out there that's like loving you right now. I'm just saying, the fan club is growing right now. I'm already a fan right now. I'm like, oh shoot, I'm so glad I DM'd this guy.
Good, man. I hope. Well, I appreciate that, man. You know what? I'm lucky to be alive today, and it's given me a new level of gratitude that, it's really cool, man. I sense it from listening to your stuff and looking at it that you share that same, I've came to a new conclusion that this isn't my passion in life. Like, this is my purpose, is to be in this field and make an impact on others' lives. And, from going from being a hopeless junkie to where I am today, to owning a company with a little bit of success and getting to impact thousands of lives along the way. Like, that's God, not me. And if I can relate any message to my clients, I say it like that have been through those ups and downs with their fitness. It's that I get it. Like it might have not looked the same the last 10 years when I was addicted to drugs, but the ups and the downs, you're so right. Like that helped me find my why even stronger today.
Truly
That like,
is.
this is a blessing, man. It's not work. It's a blessing to be able to make an impact. And I'll be honest, the first couple of years, Dom, I was actually really hesitant as I got back in the field and I hit the ground running, man, I was going hard. I would spend hours. I would call all my old clients. I'd offer them specials. I wanted to get going so bad, but I was embarrassed about who I had been the last couple of years, why I took a 2-year hiatus. And it took me a couple of years to finally get vulnerable and honest and just say, like, listen, like, this is my story. And what I thought I was going to get was judgment. I live in a very Mormon culture in Utah, very Mormon LDS based. But I didn't. I got nothing but love. And I think people always appreciate like a comeback story. And so that's when I started the Sober Bodybuilder, and I did a few shows and it just kind of stuck.
That really is amazing. So after you had your down moments and your way, building yourself back up mentally and physically, what were some of your steps as far as nutrition wise and programming wise? Like how'd you like reassess yourself to go back to to get ready for a show? I imagine going from your drug states to your being ready for a show, like a whole entire different set of habits. So what were some of the steps you took to become the sober bodybuilder, to go from not sober to the sober bodybuilder?
No, yeah, it's a great question. So it was, at my peak of fitness, and this was even, sadly, still addicted to opiate narcotics, but it was kind of on the DL and I was managing it. So I thought I was about 225 and about, I think probably 7%. I'm about 5'9", 5'10", and I'm 5'9". I lie always. I'm not 5'. That was kind of at the peak. And then when things started to get bad, and to give you an idea, I got sober. I was 169 pounds. Sucked up, hadn't been eating. Food was kind of the last priority on my list for that whole year. And it was crazy what the body can do just to atrophy itself for survival. So when I got sober, what was interesting was I said, okay, I'm gonna get back to eating and training. And man, that endorphin rush from the gym, that is a huge part of my why today. Is just like, that's the serotonin. But like, I remember getting back in there and I was like, man,
yes,
this is the high I was after. And I lost my way, and so I started getting back into it. I put on 40 pounds in 40 days. And 20 of that was not good, though. I was like, oh, okay, so I back up to a normal weight, but I'm carrying a lot of body fat. So I said, okay, I'm going to dial it down now. I've been sober about 6 months at this point. I said, okay, well, I got some weight back, but I got to really dial in my nutrition, and started adding some cardio in my training. I couldn't get the fat off. And so I was really confused, and I ended up going and getting some blood work. And apparently a lifestyle of drugs and running the streets can really damage hormonal levels. I was bottom tanked out. And so, I got some advice from the doc to be able to get my hormone levels back up. So that's when I first kind of reassessed, because I could tell I wasn't right, but I only had that awareness because I had been where I had been before. And once I got that running more smooth, like I started getting back to me. And, I went from training I went back and I was only training 4 days a week initially for probably 6 months. Just because it was a very taxing thing for my body still at that point. And so I knew I needed a lot of recovery time. So I ended up moving up to about 6 days a week again and training real hard. And, I realized, hey, I think, I had always talked about doing a show. I was the guy that would always talk about it at a party. I'm going to do a show one day. It was always one day. But really, it was like, I have this big secret of drug addiction that none of you guys know. So I finally decided to do that.
Taking action.
I decided I'm going to do the show. And so June of 14, I did my first show and actually did really well. And so leading up to that, though, I don't know if you kind of want me to go.
I'll be curious to know just to hear it. I'm
just
curious
what
how
else
you went from 4 to 6, and being your weakened state, how'd you approach that?
Well, getting up to kind of more of a regular training level, and I think it's important for people to know. I see these trainers at my gym, and they'll have a guy who will come in who hasn't lifted in a decade, and they're running them through this workout, and I feel like it's to try to impress the client, right? I'm going to take you. I'm like, that guy is not going to be able to move for a week. His cortisol is through the roof right now. His body is freaking out.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And, they work them into the ground, and I'm like, man, you could have ran him through a really basic workout, and it would have put his body under just enough stress. And so I had the awareness to kind of start slow. So I did, and I transitioned. I could tell, I could tell when I needed, even if I was supposed to go train, even let's say a back day, but I was still really sore from just doing shoulders a couple days before. I would rest. And so I guess my message there is, if you're just getting back into the gym, like, take it easy with yourself. Like, go hard, but try to be intuitive with your body. Like, if I could tell I needed a rest day, because I understood about cortisol and being elevated in too long and the effects of that. So if you're just getting into the gym or just getting back to the gym, like, train hard, but try to listen to your body. The hard part is listening to your body, but not the bullshit in your head that tries to tell you don't need to go to the gym today. So physically I could tell. And when that started getting better, I also started to slowly increase my calories. So I increased the caloric intake to help with recovery time. And so those two, I kind of just started upping the calories a little more. And then I added another 5th day of training. And then, it went kind of periodized like that.
What were you going, like, were you counting things, or were you more just like estimating? How was your nutrition approach?
Oh no, so I was dialing it in. I still kind of do the same kind of approach. Okay. So we're a macro based company. We do macros. Whether it's, and we have the kind of liberty here in Utah, whether we write prescribed meal plans, like, this is what you're going to eat, Mrs. Jones, or it's, hey, here's some new fun ideas, but I want you to stick within this macro range. We do both at Key Nutrition, but I wasn't just counting macros. I gave myself actual meal plans that I had written and, tried to, and I was very adherent to those. I understood that, like, if I trained super hard in the gym, but I was not optimizing recovery with quality foods and the right macronutrients and calories.
Yeah, so you weren't just counting macros, kind of eating Pop-Tarts when you could?
No, man, I could go on a tangent about the flexible dieting approach. People, so you do flexible dieting at Key? And I said, no. I mean, we do not. It just like anything, people find out something's good. And this is no offense to anyone that does do flexible dieting, but, like, the quality of food matters. I don't care if you hit a 40-40-20 on your macros, if 20% of those or 50% of those carbs came from Pop-Tarts.
You're not going in the right direction. No matter where the calories are, that the nutrition is still the biggest factor. You're not just eating food to get calories, you're eating food for the nutritional aspect of it. So not a fan of the flexible Pop-Tart dieting.
Right. Yeah, man. I tell you what, I can tell you that it's just crazy how just, when Paleo came in strong in the CrossFit community, which is such a contradiction to me. It's like, they're telling to limit carbohydrates for a really high glycolytic activity workout where you're going to these high RPMs. And, so Paleo kind of, got this where they said, okay, well, you can eat anything as long as it's quality. That's not correct either. And then, in my opinion, and then then, macros became more of a thing, and people said, oh, well, why don't you just do it flexible and eat whatever the hell you want as long as you can fit it in those numbers. And again, took something that was good and took it to an extreme that probably
it's
wasn't
definitely a trend in the
very
fitness
healthy
thing.
for most people.
You find something that is exploited to some outrageous amount. Even keto is getting exploited a lot now too. The gist of it is the base of it is fine, but people are just going nuts. Eat bacon, and bacon is good, and bread is bad. It's just guys, it's just you're getting away from the base. Nutrition's everything.
Amen, dude. I don't think keto is such it's a big craze right now, and it has some good principles. Just like you said, it sounds like we're on the same thought process there. But people took it, and now people are trying to do keto. And I'm really interested to see in another maybe 5 years when we have a lot more blood work of these people doing keto, what it looks like. Because you got to remember, getting this result on the outside, whether it's muscle hypertrophy, abs, lean, body fat loss, reduction, is all a result, in my opinion, of getting healthy on the inside. It's the byproduct. So you get super healthy on the inside, you get everything flowing, optimizing the best and most efficiently it can. This desired result at the aesthetic is kind of the
100%. I agree with
the
that
byproduct
so much.
of that, And keto, when we talk about building muscle, it's crazy to me, man. Utah is just, and this is probably every state out. It's just relevant because I'm here, and this is the only really feedback I have. But man, when something becomes big, there was an HCG clinic on every block when that was big, and now it's keto. Everything's keto, and it amazes me that some people don't understand. They would come into me wanting to build muscle, and they said, "Well, yeah, I've been doing a keto approach." And the studies aren't very promising that you're going to get a lot of hypertrophy and muscle gain without any kind of carbohydrates. So if you're looking for muscle gain, you have to find an appropriate nutrition to match that. And in my opinion, keto's not it. Now you're going to meet the genetic freak who is jacked on keto. I've met one. He can do keto. The guy's twice my size. Mm-hmm. He would be twice as my size if he did any diet.
Like I said, the podcast is called The Fundamentals Will Get You There. So those people that are going to be a little more exaggerated, the freaks. But for most people going in through it, you got to stick to the basics. I couldn't agree more. Could not agree more.
Yeah, you look at, if you're listening to this and you want to build some muscle, first off, you got to train hard. I think that goes without saying. And how many days a week that is, I think really depends on how hard you're going during those sessions. It could be as low as 4. I think it's got to be at least 4, in my opinion, to really get a lot of size. But all the way up to 6, I would never recommend training 7 days a week. And then you got to look at matching the right nutrition. And I can tell you, if you're looking for hypertrophy, if you're looking for muscle gain, you got to eat a balance of carbs, fats, and protein. And you got to maximize the right kind of carbs, post-workout compared to maybe, for dinner, and knowing those and having an idea of having all of them in sequential amounts. I don't think people understand that protein is the building blocks of muscle, but carbohydrates are actually the body's most preferred delivery system for the protein into muscle tissue. So, and that's why people, the Atkins diet, when that was big, just atrophied muscle like crazy. But how? Because they were eating 50-60% protein. And it's because they didn't have any carbs.
That really is the case. People really don't forget how protein sparing carbs are, and how, and a lot of these media people villainize carbs so much, and people just go right with it. It is nuts how many battles I have to fight with people. No, you can have carbs because of this, and they're like, no, carbs are cakes. I can't eat cakes and be healthy. I'm like, well, not cakes, but not all carbs are just cakes. It's a battle. It's a battle.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I get it a lot. That carbs are somehow made the devil, and they're not all created equal. And when you look at glycemic index and glycemic load, meaning kind of how any particular food affects blood sugar, or a whole meal together impacts blood sugar. I can just tell you the difference of a sweet potato and a Pop-Tart is significantly different on an insulin response. There's just no other way around it. And so it was interesting, actually, when I did my first show. So I learned a couple things from doing my shows, okay? First off was I actually had a really healthy prep, meaning that the lowest my carb number got was about 150 to
Really?
175
That's
grams.
pretty
And that
good.
was like the last couple weeks, a day. Yeah, right. You know, you hear guys constantly having to go zero carbs. So I was eating 300 grams of carbs for a good portion of my prep. So my clients that try to tell me that, you know, gaining carbs or eating carbs, they can't lose body fat. I will disagree all day and give them some case studies, including myself, of that it can be done. And so, and I was utilizing things like oatmeal and sweet potatoes and all these different things. But I had a pretty healthy prep. Like I was doing 30, 40, 45 minutes of cardio at the end a day. Not some of these guys do an hour and a half. And I ended up doing really well. You know, I took second in my open
Nice.
class, and I won my little novice beginners class. And I didn't have this big rebound. People talk about gaining all this weight after. I didn't, and I fully believe that's because I did it the correct way and didn't have to have any kind of thyroid destruction or anything by
For
taking away
people that are
carbs. So.
listening that don't know about why that carb number, that 150 was such a big deal, I realized that that made perfect sense to us because we're in it. But like as far as the fundamentals, people, why do you typically cut your carbs when you're getting ready for a show?
Well, so as far as when you look at getting that last little bit of body fat off, cutting those carbs can be a really effective tool to do that. Because what you do is you minimize insulin. Well, you're probably listening to me, hearing me say, I just said that cutting carbs isn't good. Well, to get this achieved result, and this is my biggest problem with with the physique industry as a whole. I mean, and I still get competitors ready, but I tell them, hey, I'm not the coach that's going to get you say, hey, we're going to do whatever it takes to have you win, including destroy your body. So I'm not going to do anything that's going to push your body to these limits. So if I'm not the coach for you, I understand. But that carb number, you start cutting that lower, and you're going to tap into body fat. But what a lot of people don't realize is there's a reason when people start losing a lot of muscle when that happens. So you'll see these guys that spend all this time bulking up to this big physique. They're huge. And then they do a show and they start to kind of look gone. Their face goes thin, everything. They get the cheekbones. And so they're willing to lose or sacrifice some of that muscle in order to get super lean, knowing that the transition out of that is going to be really hard. So cutting carbs, you're going to minimize insulin. So you're going to probably tap into more fat. You don't have insulin floating around the blood, period. But the downfall is, unless you're taking exogenous hormones like a lot of the professionals are, like, you're going to lose a lot of muscle. And so that 150 number, most people have to go all the way down to zero. I still had some the whole time, and I'm grateful for that, because I don't think I would have. I was grouchy on just a low carb number.
Yeah, I don't know how they do those really low
that
numbers.
Was low for me.
I'm like, even for me, like if I ever do anything and I'm like below 2, I'm like cranky. So being around like 150 or lower than that is like insane to me.
Right. And so, I did lose a little bit of muscle, but not as much as some of the guys I saw going at it. And so I hope that kind of cleared it up. You can cut your carbs, and you're gonna tap into more fat probably initially. But for me, it was kind of the last resort option to get that last little bit off. I continued to lose body fat on 300 grams, which shows me it was just that last little stubborn fat. We had to go to an extreme measure to get an extreme physique.
So extreme physiques. Now, just for you guys listening, this goes back to what we were saying before, aligning with your goals. So what they do for their shows about the cutting carbs, getting that last little bit of fat off, can work for them in that moment because they're getting ready for a show. But for most of you guys who just try to cut carbs just because you want to look skinny for for life, or whatever is your reasoning as you try to lose weight for this reason, that's not sustainable. Okay, so they do this for the show, and after the show, they go back to more regular numbers. So that 150 would go back to like a 2 or a 3, or depending on who they are. But you have to make sure, guys, that you understand that what they do for a show is what they do for a show. And then after the show, they regulate themselves again to more normal numbers.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone listening, like, I first off, I mean, if I'm being transparent, like I don't really recommend anyone doing a show, and that's just more what it did to my life, Dom. Like as far as it took me back to kind of this selfish, self-centered nature, but it isn't. I can tell you that I have a 61-year-old client right now who's losing body fat. It's a female, and she's eating 150 grams of carbs. So I can tell you that if you're thinking, hey, I'll just cut my carbs and lose some weight, it's only going to work for an initial amount of time. And then you're going to run yourself hormonally into a lot of issues, a lot. You know, carbohydrates are actually the most metabolically stimulating hormone because they affect, you know, T3, T4 levels more effectively than any other macronutrient. So my message to you is keep your carbs in. If you can look at anything, instead of minimizing, maybe look at the quality of them, you know, and look at, you know, what kind of carbs you're doing pre and post workout. And I know you wanted to dive some into kind of, you know, a gaining muscle protocol. So that's, let me just tell you, if you want to gain some adequate muscle,
yes, you do.
You got to have a lot. You got to have a lot of carbs.
Yes, you do. And quality carbs at that. So what are some of the quality carbs you recommend eating?
You know, so I'm a big fan of oatmeal.
Yes,
oat bran.
yes.
I'll do Ezekiel bread a lot. I'll do you know, your sweet potatoes, your rice. I use a lot of white rice or and a carb called highly branched cyclodextrin, which is kind of like, I do it intra-workout. It's a carb matrix that's really quick in and out of your intestine, so quick out of your digestive tract. And I'll do a lot of white rice post-workout because I actually want that insulin spiked after a really hard lift to help deliver nutrients. And I see people constantly wanting to gain muscle, and they're going in and they're doing some heavy lifting. And they're going crazy. And then they get done and they have one scoop of ISO at 20 grams, and then they go to bed, you know, say they're training at night. And I said, you're missing the most important meal there for gaining muscle, which is post-workout.
Oh, man. We're very similar in a lot of these things. Like, I agree with a lot of things that you're saying. Yes, absolutely.
Good. Great minds think alike. So I don't care if it's 9 p.m. and you got done with your workout. You need to have a sufficient amount of carbs. I'm telling you, if you want that protein delivered adequately to your muscles to replenish glycogen. Also, you got to remember, carbohydrate, there's one mitigating factor for cortisol, the stress hormone in your body, and that's insulin. So what spikes insulin? Carbs. So if carbs can help kind of cool down any kind of extra cortisol response you got, because you don't want cortisol high after a workout, it might raise during a really hard workout. But after that, you want to push it down. Well, carbs are the best way to do that. They're also the best delivery system for the protein. So yeah, I would recommend having a quick acting carb post workout. That's why I do white rice. I'll do a white potato sometimes, like a regular baked potato. So immediately post workout, I'll do a shake and some kind of usually carb drink, either, you know, dextrose or highly branched cyclodextrin or carbolin. These are just carb drinks you can buy, you know, online. And I'll do that usually with some protein. And then about an hour later, I have a good meal of, you know, 6 ounces of lean meat, and then at least a cup of white rice. And again, these are just my portions, but I guess my message to anyone listening is please take advantage. Like your body just worked so hard with you for that workout.
Yes,
give it a reward and feed it adequately. Yeah. And I get well, it's 9 p.m. at night. And I said, whoever made up the rule of don't eat past 6 is a jackass. Like, What if you go to bed at 2 a.m.? That's the dumbest rule I've ever heard. I get the thesis behind it is don't eat a bunch of ice cream before bed. And if you don't eat past 6, if you're just a normal person who doesn't eat very good, you might consume less calories. I understand the thesis. But when we're talking about really being into fitness, you got to remember, whether it's 9 p.m. at night and you just finish your workout, whether it's 9 a.m., you need to feed the body the same.
The total calories consumed and total calories expended for the whole day. No time frame, no magical pill. I don't know. It doesn't matter if it's raining, whatever little voodoo thing you guys come up with, whatever the media man says next. Calories consumed and calories expended.
Right.
That's the total thing right there. Now, Brad, as far as your podcast, what can they find more information about that?
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. So, our podcast is called The Key Nutrition Podcast, and you do have to put the whichever one, The Key Nutrition Podcast. And, it's, dude, honestly, I listened to your podcast and I really liked it because I feel like we try to convey the same message, which is I wanted a place where people could come sift through all the bullshit and just like what's factual, what's proven. And like, listen, like whatever fad your Aunt Becky is on, like, I don't give a shit about. Like, I don't care how quick she lost the weight because she's probably going to gain it back. And like, so we try to have, we have different guests who talk all, hormones and different coaches across the country who've been successful, just like I'm getting the opportunity to be on yours. And so I would actually like to extend the offer. I want you on ours.
Cool,
I think
awesome.
That would be a really cool synergistic effect.
Yeah, definitely. We'll set that up.
So you have to let me know.
Now, as far as that, if anybody else is trying to find more information about you besides the Key Nutrition Podcast, what other ways do they contact you and your team, Brad?
Yeah, so our Instagram tag is actually at Key Nutrition Utah. And then our website is just keynutrition.com. And my personal Instagram is at _sober_body.
That's the name, guys. That's where it all started. Now, Brad, we also asked
where it all
started,
on
this podcast. So you can ask a question to the listeners for them to answer. It could be anything you want. It could be something silly or something intriguing. You need some time to think about it, you can. What's your question of the day? Mm-hmm.
Oh, my question to ask people. I mean, you know what, man? It's cheesy, but it's kind of been my theme lately with realizing just, man, like I'm in this, I found my why even more the last year about why I do this for a living, why I continue to prep my meals, why I continue to go to the gym 5 times a week when I'm not training for a show and probably won't for a few more years if my wife has anything to say about it. But because my why right now is so much focused on my business, and I realized that I'm in this for impact. I want to impact as many lives as I can, and finding that why again for me lit me up professionally and in the gym. So my question to you guys is like, and maybe it's been asked, but what is your why? Like, why are you trying to get in? Why are you into fitness? Why are you trying to get into fitness? Why? Knowing your why behind this will instill so much power within to say no when you want to say yes to that cupcake, to be okay taking a Tupperware somewhere if you have to, or be okay at a restaurant ordering the healthy option instead of the smothered cheese fries. If you don't know your why and it's just because I hate that I'm fat, for me, I think you got to find something a little deeper that gives you more meaning.
That's a great question.
That's my question for the day.
So, Brad, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. A lot of value today. Thank you for being a guest.
Dude, I appreciate it, man. I could have chatted
no problem at all.
Day, so I
and guys, I want to thank you so much for listening to the Fitness Fundamentals Podcast. Once again, your host, Dom Jackson. We had Brad Jensen of Key Nutrition on the podcast. Thanks so much for listening, guys, and take care.